Hello.
Brandon, welcome back to Niche Conversations.
Good to
I'm
be
Jessica
back.
DeWitt. I'm one of the editors here at the Network in Canadian History and Environment, and you're my second conversation today.
Oh, wow.
Um, you kicked off season 5, and you're also on the first day of season 6. Can you tell us more about yourself, Brandon?
My name is Brandon Cordeiro. I teach at Lakehead University. I teach Canadian history, among other things. A lot of my research is focused on Canada and the nuclear age. A
Mm-hmm.
little bit about the bombs and kind of the peace movement, but also just looking at kind of the nuclear industry itself and kind of um, the opponents of kind of the nuclear industry in Canada.
Yeah. And last season, we talked about the nuclear industry in Northern Ontario. But this time, I invited you to come back to talk about a 2020 article that you wrote for us for the Perennial Problem series, I believe, which was Intersections of Health and Environmental History. And it's the I Gave My Tooth to Science, the Voice of Women, and the Baby Teeth Collection Program. And one of the reasons I wanted to revisit this piece is that it's one of those articles that I noticed gets pretty steady traffic. And I
Yeah.
think I think that's because there's probably a lot of people who remember being a part of this. It kicks up nostalgia, something, they remember it, or they're talking to someone and they end up Googling it, and then they end up getting to your article. Yeah, so that's why I was like, let's talk about it a bit more because people seem still very interested in it. Um, so let's start off by talking about, who were the voice of women and what was their position in this Cold War historical moment.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for every couple of months I get like a retweet or it's always been
Yeah.
great. So I love to see that. The Voice of Women's a group that forms in the late 1950s and early 1960s, really kind of coming at the question of the bomb. At the height of kind of nuclear testing in the 1950s and kind of the growing tensions between the United States and the USSR, and with Canada kind of
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of that, and with kind of all the fears of bombs coming over over the northern skies and raining down on Canada and the United States. There was this kind of this growing kind of fear about the Cold War and kind of the extent of nuclear annihilation. You
Yeah.
know, the duck and cover and the safety drills that students might of a certain age might remember.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see the Voice of Women, and these are just everyday women, working class, not even working class, but middle and upper class women, some working class women who really were like, well, it's just these debates are getting nowhere with the men. We have these kind of these hard-headed leaders in the
Mm-hmm.
United States and in the USSR, and they argue that if only the voice of women could kind of rise up, we might see kind of peace come to kind of to the world and such. And so
Yeah.
after a couple of meetings, and this all stems from a few articles from Lotta Dempsey, who was a writer for the Toronto Star, I believe.
Okay.
And she had written a couple of commentaries about the Cold War context and about kind of the growing fears of nuclear annihilation. And it was from her articles that women came together to kind of um, join in and think of ways that they could kind of protest against
Yeah.
the mounting Cold War. So
Cool. Yeah. And so you focus in on one of these particular programs that they were headed headed or supported, which is the baby teeth collection program. So can you tell us what that was?
yeah, the Baby Teeth program. It was a little project run between 1962 and 1965. It was led by Dr. Ursula Franklin, who was a member of the Voice of Women, and she worked with Dr. Murray Hunt of the University
Mm-hmm.
of Toronto. I think he was in the dentistry department. And really, their whole they got this idea from a group in St. Louis, the Greater St. Louis Citizens Committee for Nuclear Information, and they had run a similar kind of program in 1958.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to kind of gather, I think, about 100,000 baby teeth from across the United States. And it was a project that had kind of gained some influence among kind of the early. I mean, and at this point, we are very much in that early environmentalism phase.
Yeah.
um, there is that blending between kind of these peace activist groups and the early environmentalism. And you see in the
Mhm.
1960s, environmental groups are very, it's a lot of guerrilla activism. And it's not until about the 1970s when we start to see, a more really purely scientific approach, doing reports and studies and then taking water samples or whatever. There's a lot more theater in the 1960s, but this kind of blends both because it's the shock of kind of baby teeth. There's a vivid image that comes with thinking about babies' teeth
Yeah.
and babies themselves within the Cold War context. And so the Voice of Women leads this project for a couple years, and they're basically just asking women across the country, if your baby's teeth fall out, mail them in. We'll send you a button that you can give to the child, a little token, a little prize that just says, "I gave
Yeah.
my teeth to science." That's where I got the title from. And it was a very, I mean, they didn't get the results they wanted. They got some interesting facts and understandings about climates and atmospheres and how radiation moves across Canada from these tests. But they were
Mhm.
using the baby teeth because they could show kind of a difference between children who were born before atomic testing and then those who were born afterwards. That's why um,
Yeah.
they targeted collecting babies' teeth in general. And they set up drives across schools. They were at the CNE in Toronto. They set up a booth there where people could
Mhm.
drop off their baby teeth, and they ended up getting about 40,000 baby teeth for the study.
Cool.
um, the results, yeah, they found, yes, like levels of strontium 90, which was kind of the big fear.
Mhm.
It was, it was there, of course, but it was, of course, government officials can always kind of go back to, what is um, a manageable amount of radiation that we can consume in our daily lives, an acceptable amount of
Mhm.
radiation. But they also found other things like children who were breastfed had less radiation than those who were bottle fed. Uh,
Interesting.
I guess because of the filtration of
Yeah.
the way that milk is filtrated through the breast and stuff. So, a couple interesting things, but but in general, it just shows like the abilities of kind of grassroots organization to kind of take these chances and to
Mhm.
kind of build a national project that, as big as kind of the baby teeth program.
Yeah. Yeah. It has. I love this topic because it really does interweave so many different threads, whether it's the nuclear anxieties, whether it's histories of health, women's history, environmentalism, like it all is like coming together in this program. It's a really cool example to, connect all those threads. And it also has me thinking of like one of the things that it's making me think of currently is like microplastics, like
Yeah.
this idea of these pollutants like infecting our children and like um, you know
And they're so small that
yeah, yeah,
it's almost
undetectable.
invisible in the same way that the fears of nuclear radiation. It's a
Hmm.
sense you don't know if you're being if you're absorbing these things. You can't feel it, you can't
Yeah,
smell it. So
yeah, and
um
we largely don't know what the impact is going to be,
mhm.
right? And the impact of some of this nuclear fallout in these children, they're now in their 60s and 70s, right? Am I making that? Am I doing that math right? So like, we don't know. Maybe they're now like having certain cancers or what have you, and it's like those impacts that we really don't know, but the anxieties that go with that, and yeah, how children often bring that to the fore. Like people really get worked up about that part. Um,
I mean, there's also like a great Laura Sefton McDonald article about the occupational hazards in the uranium mines, and again, those same
yeah.
kind of fears and how many workers were getting very sick and getting cancers and then dying.
Hmm.
Elliot
Yeah.
Lake, and how it just became a part of life, and how
Hmm.
how do governments kind of remedy that? How does industry remedy that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So again, like another thing about this article that got me thinking about, our current moment and how there's a rise in um, a renewed public distrust of science. And I was wondering if you see like how this program tells us about the relationship to public relationship to science at the time during the Cold War, and if you personally see if there's any applications for today's moment.
Yeah. So I wrote my dissertation. I finished it in 2021.
Okay.
So I was writing my dissertation right through kind of the COVID scare and stuff like that, and that's when anti-science was really on the rise and stuff like that. And the question of can we trust science?
Yeah.
Who are these scientists? Who are doing these studies? What are their economic or political connections? And that was something that really did stick with me through the writing of my dissertation. It was something I brought up in my defense, even that it just speaks to kind of and particularly with the nuclear industry, whether it's bombs or nuclear power, because there is so much secrecy behind it still. There's secrecy there. Governments don't give us the full kind of context about these programs, about these plants. And that gets people going in their own right. There's not a lot of transparency, or and especially back then there definitely was a greater lack of transparency. And so you do see a bunch of different groups popping up across Canada, peace groups, environmental groups, blendings of the two. In the case of the Voice of Women, like, this is an example of kind of, and it just shows like the ways that these organizations, these anti-nuclear organizations, to put it that way, attempted to do their own science. These groups that a lot of them kind of see themselves as these clearinghouses of information, gathering information from wherever they can, from sharing information amongst themselves, leaked documents or reports or studies that they did, trying to get the kind of most understanding of the information, trying to best understand kind of nuclear energy and its influence on the health and body.
Yeah. Cool. It also makes me think of like how women are often at the forefront of like public campaigns about science. Like, what I'm thinking of, like, how women are very definitely at the front of like the anti-vaccine movement. Like, just how powerful it is when women collect around these topics. Whether you agree with them or not, whether like, and also that there is a reason that people distrust the government and science. Like, there's very like what's the word I'm going for, legitimate reasons. It's like it is complicated, and just seeing like this through time, and this one example is really fascinating.
I mean, governments, they hide information. They play down kind of environmental damage, or if a river gets polluted, they use really they use language to kind of omit themselves from fixing the issues. In some cases, they talk about acceptable amounts of dangers. Again, this goes back to those ideas of kind of the risk society, and how much risk are we willing to kind of accept for kind of our modern lifestyles. And do we have kind of a say in that? Is there kind of a democratic process to kind of get through these questions about safety and the environment and the body? Sorry, you're cutting out a little bit.
There.
Oh, there we go.
I had a phone call coming in. It certainly seems. I don't know where I lost my train of thought because of that. Whatever.
I mean, we like to believe that we can kind of trust these institutions. We can trust science. We can trust governments, of course. But then again, it's there is a space for kind of anti-science to come in and challenge those notions. Whether they're right or whether they're really wrong. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it's up for debate, but yeah, going back to just the voice. I mean, it is interesting because the voice of women comes at that kind of in between of second and third wave feminism as well.
Yeah.
So there is still this like really there's deep tie to kind of maternal ideologies
Mm-hmm.
about women's place in politics and in protecting children. They're
Yeah.
seeing this kind of the maternal influence and all that. So they do see it as like the voice of women sees it as their duty to kind of be a voice in the Cold War debate and in the question about nuclear arms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the gender dynamics are very interesting. I feel like that's
Mhm.
another conversation, maybe another post. You can come back and write more about that.
Yeah.
But the gender dynamics and the matriarchy, the maternal instincts, this
Mhm.
that comes back throughout history, right? We have there's another resurgence of that right now, right? With trad
Yeah.
wives and like
Yeah.
we've got like it's just it resurfaces, reforms. There's we've there's some people who fight like against it or try to transform it, and yeah, it's all very fascinating, and yeah, that's why this topic is really cool.
Even
um
like the ecofeminism, which it
yes, yeah.
waxes and wanes, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the connections between the intersections of gender and the environment. It really is kind of like an interesting
Yeah,
kind of look at things. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, well, that was fun. I
Yeah.
enjoyed revisiting that with you, Brandon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and people can always find that on the NiCHE website. I'll post in our stories again. Yeah, and yeah, that means that we've talked about both your NiCHE articles, so you gotta write another one.
I can't believe. I know it's great. Yeah. Your stuff's working for me, so it's good.
Okay, thanks for joining me today, Brandon. This was
Yeah.
fun.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.